Welcome to Bunch Formation, your newest favorite college football show. I am Chris Vannini, and I think everything we love about the Masters is what David hates about the Rose Bowl.
Not true. But I am David Ubben, and our players actually go to school here in Texas, not like some other places, Chris.
Welcome back, everybody. Got a fun show. We are going to talk about spring practice, some questions, some things we know. SEC, they're kind of wrapping up spring practice now. Big Ten, other places are about halfway through, so we feel like it's a good check-in on some of the things we want to know, things we've heard so far. It's also an important time for recruiting, which is something that David is terrible at in CFB 26, and it has turned his dynasty team into a nightmare at the moment.
We're coming back. We're coming back. It's all right, Chris. We'll be okay. We'll be okay.
David is the first person in the dynasty. We got like 6 or 7 people to lose to the computer. He's the first one to do it. Lost to an Ole Miss team, then fell behind 28-0 to a 2-5 Mississippi
No, I
State
didn't
team.
fall behind 28-0. I was messing with you guys. That's the whole.
Oh, okay. That part
It was like
weird.
35-10 at half, and then we started messing around. I don't know what happened. It's a long story. We have some secondary problems. We have some quarterback problems that I tried to fix in the offseason. It didn't work, and it's dark times.
You've got 3 cornerbacks on the roster and no quarterbacks that you like. And something you need to do more that you don't is
run the ball.
Nah.
But we will see. But we will have Bunch Formation Bowl 4 or 5 coming up soon. Probably next week. And I believe I have figured out in StreamYard how we can play, we can broadcast it, and you will be able to see us and our live reactions to the game. So subscribe to the Bunch Formation YouTube channel to keep an eye out for that. Hit the bell or whatever for the notifications. That's probably coming next week.
We think we figured it out. We'll find out, I guess.
Yeah, we play pretty soon, but I'm going to be gone this week traveling on assignment to a couple of places. I'll talk about that next week. Also, got some good feedback to the people who want helmet stickers. I'm going to try to make helmet stickers before the season. Email us at bunchformationpod@gmail.com. Subject line, helmet sticker. Give us your address. You'll eventually get one when I get around to making them. But that's been good feedback. And if you haven't checked out the show notes, we got timestamps in there if you want to jump ahead. Or if you want to advertise for the podcast now or for the football season, please reach out. We're also Bunch Formation Everything on your social medias. Please leave us a 5-star review. We read them on the show. We got a couple of comments, David, on Spotify. 2 people who did not agree with your take. The conference championships do not matter. One of them from Adam Skirto, who says, David, your conference championship take is worse than bringing your own salad dressing to a restaurant.
I'll defend both of these to the death.
Most fan bases would still bite their arm off for a trophy. Oregon, Ohio State, and Georgia shouldn't be the tail that wags the dog. Chris is right. The problem is the conferences are too big and don't make sense, and expanding the playoff would be a poor substitute. Love the show, even though, and maybe especially, because of David's unhinged opinions. Keep it up, Sco Buffs. And another one from Joe M.V. I disagree with David about conference championships not mattering. As a Purdue alum, when we made the Big Ten title game a few years ago, shout out Big Ten West being horrible, it was great. The broader issue is the schedule, which needs a fix ASAP. David, any response?
People are in deep denial about the conference championship stuff. I don't know what to tell you. I'm sorry.
The
playoff
just say
defines the entire sport.
I would just say, though, that's a Purdue fan, a Colorado fan. The days of the Big Ten West and the Big 12 North are gone. That is the other problem for your teams, that you don't have a weaker division. It's now 1 versus 2 in all these conferences, and the chances of your team being 1 or 2 are also less. But I thought that was a good conversation. I know it's kind of been talked about for a while, but what to do with conference championships, how to make them matter, that's on the last episode. Thought we had a good conversation on that. Also, as of right now, we are planning to have a special interview later in the week, something that's kind of I will really enjoy. I'm not going to say what it is in case it doesn't happen, but that'll be in your feeds later this week, probably Thursday or Friday. Keep an eye on that. Okay, now let's get into spring practice, and I don't know what drop to start this off with, but we'll just go with this one.
We got 30 minutes for the rest of our life.
That feels like a good time. That feels like a good time for the joke kind. All right, we just got to stop that inside trap, man.
We just got to stop that little inside trap.
There we go.
That's what the teams are working on. They're working on stopping the inside trap. Florida did have its spring game.
Man.
Florida did have its spring game on Saturday, so that one works there for the Tim Tebow of it all. This, by the way, might be the last spring practice as you know it, because there's a very good chance that the various NCAA football committees could this spring or this summer change spring practice to OTAs, organized team activities like the NFL, which could be like 3 or 4 week segments split up over a period of time. It's something coaches have kind of wanted for a while. You can kind of push it back later into the summer if you want, but that's on the table. So normal spring practices, we know it may be changing, but
by the way, a couple
now.
things on spring practice before we get into it.
Yeah.
Just big picture stuff that I've learned in my travels. It's getting weird out there. Coaches are doing some experimenting that I have not heard of. One, I think more coaches are okay with nixing spring than I thought they would be. I think the majority opinion, I would say a solid majority, is okay with like, hey, let's move it to later, probably, maybe even after the spring semester. So that's interesting. That's something I would not have thought a couple of years back. But every coaches I've talked to, there's certainly some that would like to keep it as it is, but most of them are okay with pushing it. Secondly, two really interesting things. Wake Forest is having spring practice over like 6 weeks. They're like barely practicing, and they're doing a ton of like learning. And so you don't see that very often. You got 15 practices spread them out over 6 weeks is a long time. It's usually like 3 or 4. And two, South Carolina is doing something I've never heard of, and this is really experimental. So if you've never been to a practice before, they're all kind of the same. Like you start out stretching, indie drills, do some competition, some one-on-one stuff, and then you go to team drills. You can kind of, the second half of practice can get interesting. South Carolina's doing like full practices of indie drills and then full practices of team drills, and like every practice kind of has like a theme, and they're sort of just seeing how it goes. I don't know what this all means, but I found it interesting in talking to people that like people are doing spring like a lot differently than they have in the past. I think it might be in some ways preparing for kind of an uncertain future.
And I think the OTAs is another way to kind of let people do whatever they want, essentially, and that's what that's for. And I do think like after a year or so ago, we had that nobody was doing spring games anymore because you didn't want tape out there. You had the spring portal. You didn't want any of that stuff. And it seems like this year we're back to spring games. It's not like it used to be. There's not as many. A lot of it's offense versus defense. They're not all on TV and whatnot. But we have kind of gone back to having spring games, which I think is important. We talked about that on this show at the beginning, or maybe the old show, about spring games, it being an event for fans to come and see your team. You want to keep fans engaged and stuff like that. So I think that's good. But we'll see. We got more spring games coming up this next weekend and the next few. So let's go one by one. We will each have 5 kind of questions or thoughts we have on spring practice so far, what we want to see. And I'm going to start off with Alabama's quarterback situation, because Alabama had the not spring game, but they had a scrimmage this past week, and Keelan Russell balled out. He went 20 for 32, 229, 4 touchdowns. Some of that was red zone work. It's not like a full normal thing, but those are good numbers. Austin Mack, who was the backup last year, has apparently been dealing with an injury, so didn't get as much time. But Keelan Russell, he was the number 2 player in the recruiting class behind Bryce Underwood in last year's class. And that quarterback battle, Alabama is one of these few places that is not bringing in a portal guy and who's a junior, senior. They're going to try to develop. Both of these guys are pretty young. They're both 18, 19 years old, even though Mack's been in college football for 3 or 4 years. What do you think about Alabama in this quarterback situation?
So, going back for a year or two, I mean, I still correspond from time to time with like Texas high school coaches, and the buzz about Keelan Russell coming out of high school was wild. Like, talked about him in a way that I haven't heard guys talked about in a while, man. Like, I don't know, probably someone more recently than Kyler Murray, but definitely a guy that was like, this kid is unbelievable. Now, how that translates to college and learning the speed of the game and processing is different. But I think, obviously, Kalen DeBoer has a pretty strong record of developing quarterbacks, and we saw him last year with Ty Simpson, a guy that more clearly fit what he wants to do and the kind of guy that he's used to coaching with. It worked a lot better, with Jalen Milroe. You kind of had him. He was so special in so many different ways. You kind of had to just roll with it, even though he didn't really fit what you wanted to do. Ty Simpson last year, the offensive line kind of fell apart late in the season. They never really had a running game. Ty Simpson seemed like he got banged up late in the season, but there were moments where it was like, oh, this looks really special. We'll see what Ty Simpson becomes to the next level. I'm not really sure what to expect from him.
Yeah,
but
I think the big
are there.
Yeah.
So
I think the bigger question
like
for Alabama,
getting a portal guy, and I like rolling with these guys, and just saying, hey, like I do think for as popular as the sort of portaling a QB annually has gotten, I do think there's something to be said for home growing a quarterback, because you might have a guy for these guys if you're probably starting for 2 years if you're one of these guys if you get them, and I think that second year can really pay off for you.
Yeah, and I think actually the bigger question for Alabama is not going to be quarterback. Like, they'll probably be okay. It's really the toughness. It's the lines. It's running the ball. That's got to be better. That we're not going to know till we get to the fall. David, what's your first question?
Real quick on the Alabama thing.
Yeah.
Before we go, talking to people, I've heard some interesting theories about Alabama. I can't remember if I talked about this on the show or not, Chris. I think I talked to you about it. But Alabama, that lack of physicality that we saw that seems to have disappeared from the program. One thing that came up was from somebody who knows that program pretty well was the check with me stuff that Alabama does. Under Saban, they never really did that. It was easier to blow people off the ball. And when you have their system where we're going to call our play, look to the sideline, check with the coaches, Ryan Grubb might change something. So a lot of the time, your offensive linemen are in their stance for 15 or 20 seconds. Like, not all the time, but a lot of the time. And, people who would know said that it's hard to blow people off the ball when that's the case versus when you're just running up to the line and going. It'll be interesting to see if they adjust, if that's nonsense, if there's some truth to that. I don't know. But the fact that they still have really good athletes on the offensive line and they just have all of a sudden not been able to run the ball. And if you look back at Kalen DeBoer's offensive lines, I think Washington is the best example. I think they won the Joe Moore Award. They weren't great at running the ball there either with Michael Penix. So Bama's been an interesting spot. But yeah, the quarterback spot will be something to keep an eye on. My first question, Chris.
Yep.
I'm really curious. We have this new class of coaches moving up from the American into the SEC in the Viper's Nest. John Summerall at Florida, Alex Golesh at Auburn, Ryan Silverfield at Arkansas. And then obviously you have kind of Will Stein at Kentucky, where you're taking over kind of a different situation. Pete Golding at Ole Miss, very, very different situations there. We've seen him kind of look a little bit. But the offseason can do a lot for your narrative, for your relationship with the fans, for how they view you. I think, we'll talk about Lane Kiffin later. He's sort of in a class of his own in terms of the new head coaches in the SEC. But I would say Florida fans weren't like super fired up over John Summerall, and I think he's done a little bit of work in how he's handled things and how he has addressed just everything that's happened over the spring and in his general attitude. I feel like he's done a good job of sort of bringing people under the tent, winning people over. I think Alex Golesh has done pretty well the same way. Ryan Silverfield hasn't made a ton of headlines, but certainly, hasn't done anything to hurt himself. And all three of those guys, I don't know that people were like ready to throw them a parade. And then Alex Golesh bringing in his own quarterback in Byron Brown is interesting to me as well. And Will Stein, the recruiting stuff has been fantastic. Pete Golding, obviously a pretty public scandal, but like if you win games, no one cares. And right now he's got obviously the most capital of any of those guys because of how the playoff went. But what's your feel for this group, Chris? And because it feels like we're going to have a couple of these guys, get pretty deep in the playoff pretty soon. And I'd say at least one of these guys is probably getting fired in 3 to 4 years. Like, what's your feel for this group?
Well, you mentioned too, like no spring portal for them. Like, is that going to make it harder for them? I go kind of back and forth on if it's harder or easier because they're not going to have to worry about losing any of these guys. Then again, if you missed on a spot, you're not going to be able to fill it. But Summerall had an interesting quote after the spring game on Saturday, kind of paraphrased here from our colleague Matt Baker, but Summerall basically said, it's time we wake this thing up. This is a sleeping giant. It ain't a matter of if we're going to win here. It's how fast we're going to win. It's coming. And Summerall's been kind of ping-ponging back and forth on, like, he doesn't want to do the Billy Napier, like, give us time thing, but because he needs to fire the fans up. The fans are kind of, and the fans are into him. I know a number of Florida people who didn't love the hire when they made it, and they've turned, and now they like it, and they like the energy, and they like stuff. So, Aaron Philo is probably going to be your starting quarterback there. You paid up to keep Jade. You paid up to keep Jaden Ball. Probably overpaid, but you kind of had to. And yeah, a lot of coaches who have either not been in this position for a lot of first-time Power 4 head coaches here, and that will definitely be interesting. I think the lack of a spring portal for them will help them because people will get to know them, get to know the players, and you kind of go from there. And that kind of takes me to my second one, which is in this new class, Lane Kiffin.
Mm-hmm.
Does this Lane Kiffin honeymoon period mean anything? You bring Kim Mulkey out to the basketball game the night of the Sugar Bowl. You're on social media doing a bunch of stuff. Everybody's excited. You got, the number one portal class. And then Lane made a comment the other day of, like, things don't happen overnight, and was kind of basically asking for patience. And it's like, no, you're not going to get that. No. You shouldn't get that, and you're not going to get that here at LSU. You have to make the playoff this year. Like LSU, yes. That has to be the goal. And maybe even winning a game or two because of what you left at Ole Miss. And so there's going to be a lot of stuff has been said, will continue to be said during the offseason about Lane Kiffin. All that really matters to me is if you're winning games on Saturday in the fall. And until then, it's just noise. So Lane can ask for patience or not, or people can be excited or not. You got to see the results. That's the only thing that matters at LSU.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's something to be said for, like, saying things don't happen overnight might not be the same thing as asking for patience. But it has ignited an interesting argument about LSU's place in college football. And if you don't think this team should make the playoff in year one or have big success in year one, my question to that would be why? What
right.
You paid all this money to go get Lane Kiffin. He takes over what they won 8-9 games last year. Pretty solid foundation to build upon. People can talk about culture change all you want. You pay all this money to upgrade your quarterback. You get probably the best guy on the market. You can sort of debate with that, but whatever, you've upgraded there.
And Sam Levitt from Arizona State.
Levitt. And you've got all this money invested in your roster and your coaching staff. There's not like a big bad in the SEC that everybody is super terrified of. Like Texas probably has the best roster, but you don't have to go through Texas to get to the playoff or win a game. It'd be a little bit different if we're talking about the BCS era or even the 4-team era. So I don't think there's a compelling reason why. Nobody's telling you got to win a national championship next year. You're on the hot seat. But I don't see a single possible excuse for why LSU can't be in the playoff and probably win a game and probably host a playoff game next year.
Yeah, they fired Ed Orgeron 2 years after winning a title. Brian Kelly was winning 9 games. That's not enough. You have to win 10 games. You have to be in the playoff. Like, that is what the money's for. That's what they're paying you for. So, there'll be all the questions. It doesn't matter. Just, you got to have the results on Saturday because you left a team that was a couple of seconds from playing for a national championship. So we'll see. What's your second?
Chris, my second question is one that I got to tell you I didn't think we'd ever be asking ourselves. Is Indiana a D word? I'm almost scared to say it, Chris. I don't know if I can even say it out loud.
Is it safe for children?
A dynasty? Is it possible that we're talking about Indiana as like the next great college football dynasty? I think when we saw roster movement and we saw how hard it is to sustain success and how much of a crapshoot the playoff can kind of be and like staying healthy and all this stuff, I think there was an idea that we're never going to see an undefeated national champion again. Well, we saw one last year that was pretty solidly undefeated. They had one close call all season. I guess you could count maybe the Miami game at the end, but they were the
2. I mean, Penn State and Iowa, but yeah,
that's what I'm saying. That happened, and then you look at how they worked in the portal, and you bring in Josh Hoover. I think is a really good fit for them. They were one of the biggest winners in terms of bringing in talent, upgrading there at the portal. And I've been talking to coaches around the spring and just in the off season. And I think the general consensus is that this moment that we're in college football is the moment for evaluators. For a long time, it's kind of been a recruiter's game. And to some degree, that is still true. It is about talent acquisition. But now that's largely a money conversation. I was having some conversations. It's interesting, like the young, hungry recruiter, the 28, 29-year-old staffer who can like still relate to the kids and be on the road all the time. That guy's kind of extinct now in college football, and it kind of happened overnight. It's the evaluators. Can you sniff out the best fits for your team and your scheme and knowing what you need out of the portal and then go get those guys, have the money to go get them? With how important the portal is to taking you from a good team to a great team. I don't think you can go from an okay team to a great team in the portal, but you can go from the top 15 to the top 5. I think the portal is how you do that, is fixing those little holes in your roster. And that starts with evaluation. And I think there's a pretty good chance like Indiana might run through the Big Ten again. You got to stay healthy to do it. You need Josh Hoover to be great and grow up. But Josh Hoover is probably more accomplished than Fernando Mendoza was this time last year. And I'm really intrigued to see how that fits. What do you think about Indiana, Chris?
I think one of the most interesting, fascinating, kind of telling things that happened with Indiana over the last couple of weeks was Nick Marsh, the receiver transfer from Michigan State, apparently came out to practice, might have been the first practice, in gold cleats and basically got chewed out by Curt Cignetti that you don't do that here. And that was telling for one that, you bring in a hot shot wide receiver, maybe the number one receiver transfer, and it's like, no, we're not going to baby you. Like you have to do what we do here in our system and stay humble and all these things. And also the fact that he thought he could. I don't know what was going on at Michigan State last year, but did not go well for Jonathan Smith, who got
wasn't
fired.
good.
So,
whatever it wasn't good. We saw that. Also, Curt Cignetti, not a fan of Michael Johnson.
That's a pull right there.
There it is.
But I thought that was a really set the tone for your new star player type of move there. And then also his kind of shot back at Sonny Dykes, who made kind of an offhanded comment in an answer about how many turnovers Josh Hoover had at TCU, which was many. And Curt Cignetti says something like, when Josh got here, he met his two best friends, a running game and a good defense, and then winked. So Curt Cignetti's still feeling himself. It is, the turnovers are a problem for Josh Hoover, but I think it's a really good fit for the offense. And I'm not going to say dynasty because I think in today's game, we have more parity than we've ever had. We may not have a dynasty in this game. So no, but if you thought Indiana was going to drop off, the vibes right now are very much no, they are not. My third thought is SMU the biggest threat to Miami in the ACC? I visited with Rhett Lashley on Friday, going to write something about the Ponies. And something I kind of took away from talking with Rhett is how big and long this SMU team is. Like more than he's had since he's been there and has had in a while. And he was just like, one day I was just kind of looking at the team and I'm like, what is different about us? And then he realized, wow, we're a lot bigger. And that is because SMU is just going into its third year in the ACC. This was still a group of 5 team that moved up a couple of years ago and went to the playoff right away. But they have had to get bigger, especially on the lines and all these different positions. That is the biggest difference when you make that move up. They've been recruiting very well. They've been portaling very well. They're not really losing guys. Like Rhett was like, last year we lost one guy to the portal who they wanted to keep. And it was a running back who went to Clemson. But Kevin Jennings is back. This SMU team beat Miami last year. They beat Clemson last year. This has been the top 3 team in the ACC in the 2 years that they've been here. And they kind of go under the radar every time. But I think SMU, the schedule is a bit tougher this year. But I think SMU they need to find some receivers. But SMU might be the team to watch in the ACC.
I think it's interesting. I was at NC State obviously earlier this month, and Kevin Jennings kind of came up a little bit because they were talking about CJ Bailey. They might be the only two like guys getting ready to enter their third year as a starter at their current school. That just doesn't really happen in the modern day of college football. There's something about retention there. There's something about comfort there. It's an interesting question. But I do think you'll probably see that pay off. And I think SMU, it seems like the baseline for them is really high. Like last year was kind of a nightmare in a lot of ways, and they still almost played their way into the playoff.
Dude, they lost three. They lost 3 games, I think, on the final play, including that 50-something yard field goal by Wake Forest that I watched. It was me and Adam Rittenberg. We watched it in the walk-ons at Baton Rouge. But they go into that Cal game in the last game of the regular season. If they win that game, they're going to the ACC championship game instead of Duke, and there's a good chance SMU wins that game, makes the playoff. JMU doesn't make it. Like SMU was very, very close to winning
right there
to winning the ACC last year, and who knows what happens with Miami and all that other stuff. So like
against both the teams that played, SMU's probably a touchdown favorite, wouldn't you say, in the ACC championship?
Yeah, I don't remember if they played either of them last year, but yeah, I mean
that team was clearly a better team than both Virginia and Duke. Either way, but
they were rolling at the end of the season. Remember, they beat Miami. I was at that game in overtime, and then we all thought they were going to get to and then the Cal loss was really kind of shocking. But you go kind of halfway across the country, night game. It was a weird game, but. Rhett Lashley's got something.
Chris, we getting Rhett Lashley on the show? I mentioned, hey.
I will. I think he's doing some other podcasts this week, so I was like, we'll get you later. But for SMU to keep him, which kind of went under the radar, was huge. For all the talk about Signetti staying, like that was big too. So SMU, keep an eye out. David, what about you? What's your next one?
So everybody wants to talk about who's the next Indiana. Okay, that's fine. I'm more interested in who is the next Vanderbilt or Texas Tech. These programs that have kind of been bouncing around, and all of a sudden, like, hey, there's going to be a lot more money flowing through this program, and our fortunes are about to change. I'd point to 2 programs, Chris. I would say number 1 is Oklahoma State, who had really gone stale under Mike Gundy. You bring in Eric Morris. Like, listen, Oklahoma State is not the richest program you're ever going to see, but there's money there. And Mike Gundy just was not comfortable with getting it onto his roster, and we saw what the result of that was.
And then he offended everybody by calling his fan base poor.
Also that's
not helping.
It was a problem. Mike Gundy, good football coach, not built for the modern game, I think we can say is safe to say. My second candidate, Chris, would be Virginia Tech. Really proud program. James Franklin, I think, can motivate people, can move people, can get things done, can coax money out of donors' wallets, and inspire a level of belief that has not been there in a while. You look at Justin Fuente, Brent Pry, coaches that were somewhat accomplished as coordinators, didn't go great at Virginia Tech. They haven't had a coach come in here with this kind of a resume and with this kind of I don't know, just like attitude, general way of being that gets people excited. And so I think those 2 teams jump out to me as 2 teams where when money has never been a more, what your money is, has never been a more direct line to what your record is. I think you're going to see Oklahoma State and Virginia Tech in the next 2 years make a lot of noise.
I mean, I think Oklahoma State next year is going to make noise, like right away. Like you bring in Drew Mestamaker, all these guys, really talented guys. Virginia Tech is interesting because Bill Connolly's top returning talent for every team came out. Number 4 was Virginia Tech. Even with the coaching change and all that, they kept most of their guys. And Franklin's been opening some stuff up more in spring. He's clearly got a chip on his shoulder. That could be a very, very interesting one there.
Yeah, I think too to that dynamic is interesting because if you haven't paid attention, I think we've mentioned on the show, but Brent Pry, who was the head coach, stayed at Virginia Tech, is now the defensive coordinator who he'd worked with previously under James Franklin. I have to think that helps a lot in player retention. I talked to Whit Babcock, their AD, a little bit about that this offseason, and he was telling me, like, I think it speaks to, 1, what James Franklin was like to work for, and 2, like the humility of Brent Pry, where it's like, he didn't have a great run there. They had some moments, but it wasn't great, and he's still staying there and still invested in the same place. And I think the program's going to benefit for that.
My fourth one. Will Oregon losing both of its coordinators mean anything? They lost Will Stein to the head coaching job at Kentucky, Tosh Lupoy, the DC, to Cal. And they promoted from within for both Drew Maringer, the OC, Chris Hampton, the defensive coordinator. I'm sure Dan Lanning is partially involved on the defensive side. But Oregon's a team, like, they've been so close for so long. You make a semifinal last year. You were undefeated in the regular season the year before that. Dante Moore probably was going to be like the number 2 pick in the draft and is coming back, which is huge for them. Got a lot of pieces you like there. Does the 2 coordinator stuff matter, or will it not? Are they going to mostly be in the same system, and is that going to be pretty simple? I'm going up to Oregon this week, so I'm going to talk to Dan Lanning and some other people about that. But Oregon, like, they're not blue blood because they haven't gotten over the hump, but those are 2 pretty big losses for a program that has been very consistent.
I don't know whether we're going to get the answer to that question, Chris, for like 9 months. Because for the last 2 years, Oregon has had a pretty strong case as the best team in the country. You know, last year they lose to Indiana, so probably not that strong
Twice.
going into the playoff. But well, I'm talking about on the front end, like just going into the playoff.
Yeah.
But certainly 2 years ago, they were the best team going into the playoff. But they've been right there in terms of, like, you can make a case for them as the best team. And then it's not even that you lose in the playoff. It's like really pretty embarrassing both times.
Yep.
And
both times to a team that you played earlier in the season too. So what is that about?
Yes.
What is happening there with the coaching adjustments where they have figured you out the second time and you have not figured out them?
That's a small sample size. But is it a small sample size or is that a fatal flaw? I think it's a really difficult question, because if it is a fatal flaw, then what? Like, what do you do? Like, you can't even have the conversation about, like, making a change at coach when your coach is winning 12 and 13 games every year, because Oregon is not recession proof. But it's like, if this stuff keeps happening, you're kind of in a weird spot. And so I don't know, but I mean, I think ultimately I'm a believer in college football that just keep getting to that stage, keep getting another bite at the apple, and eventually it will break your way.
Yeah.
But man, like the
the
lasting
Ryan-
image of Oregon's season the last 2 years is hard to shake for me.
It's like the Ryan Day thing, sort of, where it's just like, eventually you'll get there. And he got there. And I think Dan Lanning will probably get there. But it's harder than ever to win a championship. Like in the old days, that Oregon team 2 years ago that was undefeated in the regular season, they don't have to play Ohio. They don't have to play Ohio State a second time. That Ohio State team's not making the playoff. Or if it was the BCS days, you're in the championship game.
Who plays for Georgia? Texas? Who was number 2 that year?
Must have been Georgia won the SEC championship. Yep, beat Texas. Had to be. But we'll see. What's your fourth here?
My fourth is does the group I'm calling the Headline Boys with a Z have anything left for the Gawkers? Because Deion Sanders and Bill Belichick went a combined my math is struggling 7-17 last year. I believe that's right. Not great. Deion Sanders and Colorado. Shedeur Sanders, say what you want about him. Very good college quarterback. We'll see what lies ahead from at the pros. And then a generational talent in Travis Hunter. And then they put pieces around them. They won 9 games, won a Heisman Trophy. It was pretty impressive. And to do that at Colorado, which has had like 3 winning seasons, in 20 years, is impressive. Bill Belichick in North Carolina, yikes. Year 1, yikes. Not a lot to hang your hat on.
I came out of the season for North Carolina feeling better than I did at the midway point. Does that count for anything?
Sure, but that, so you don't think they're a smoking crater? Like, after the Clemson game, it was a disaster.
Here's a question. Which one do you think is on a better trajectory?
I think Deion and Colorado.
I would say North Carolina.
No, because I don't think they still fully understand what the sport that they're playing is. And I don't think that their evals are very good. I think when you talk about Colorado, I'm not sure that their money is where it needs to be in terms of winning in the portal, but I like some of their pickups. Danny Scudero, I think, is going to be a really good player for them. They kept Juju Lewis. With North Carolina, I like the fact that their takeaway in the middle of last season is, well, we're going to take 40 high school guys and act like once those guys flash that they're not going to get poached.
That
what are you
was weird.
what are you doing? The answer is not to go in the portal more, but the fact that they keep going in the portal and getting like G5 level talent is really concerning. Like last year, I thought their biggest problem was they don't have any really good players, which is a pretty big problem. And I think part of the reason why you hire the headline boys with a Z is that there is a value in bringing them to your program because people want to go play for them. And I think with Deion, it's not universal, but we've seen it. There are a lot of guys, some guys probably you don't want in your program, but there are a lot of guys, good players with good pedigrees that want to go play for Deion Sanders. We haven't seen a ton of that in Belichick. Like, who are the best players that they've gotten that are like, yes, like I had more money and Kirby Smart and Dan Lanning wanted me, but I said I want to go play for Bill Belichick. Like we're not seeing that.
Did you see that video from Saturday, Colorado's spring game? The clip of the players running out onto the field.
Yeah. So can we? Okay, listen.
So for people who didn't see it, it was just players running out on the field.
Yes.
Okay. And they looked
no,
tiny. They looked like children.
Okay.
Wait, hold on. They looked like children, but part of that was because they were like all wearing Guardian caps.
Yes.
So they had giant helmets.
No one seems to notice this. So a couple things. I like to think of myself as one of the more clear-eyed observers, chroniclers of Colorado football. There's a lot of people out there.
You are the Colorado guy for us.
That will tell you that Colorado is like the greatest college football program that's ever happened, and like the only reason that they struggle is because people hate Deion and like all this stuff. And there's people out there saying like, oh, this program doesn't know anything, they don't do anything, they're a joke, they're spending an hour a day working on football and the rest of it they're shooting TikToks, whatever. Like there's a lot of like pendulums. Okay, the video, it's a little unfair. The Guardian caps is real, and also it's like all specialists. There's like 3 linemen in there. Like, listen, I don't think this Colorado team is gonna be great, but I do like some of their skill position guys. Like, they lost a bunch of pieces off of last year, but like, I watched the video and I'm like, 1, they're wearing Guardian caps, which just makes everybody look smaller. That's the biggest issue. And 2, it's like some of their smaller specialists, like Cam McKell, Danny Scudero. Like, these are not like big guys, and Juju Lewis the same. Like, I saw that. I saw a lot of the like comments on it. And I just kind of rolled my eyes because it's like Deion does plenty of things in that program that are worthy of criticism and like that don't really make sense, or I think are flawed strategy. Mm-hmm. Like the off-field recruiting thing, I think is still like a problem for them. Or off-campus recruiting is still a problem for them. The fact that he like makes everybody come to him, I think, is a big issue. But like that video is not one of them. Like that, come on. So
I would say the only reason I would pick the trajectory of North Carolina is because I do believe in their coaching, and I do believe. Hold on. I do believe that the way they really improved that defense last year is a credit to the coaching, because like you said, I don't think there's that many good players. And on offense, their new offensive coordinator is Bobby Petrino. And if there's one thing Bobby Petrino can do, is he can pull a pretty good offense out of nothing, as we saw last year at Arkansas. So I like those 2 coaching pieces. Now, how long is Petrino there? How long is Belichick there? I don't know. How long is Deion there? He's got health issues. But I going into this season, I find more reasons to be at least like a little more optimistic. Whereas with Colorado, it's like, outside of Travis Hunter winning the Heisman Trophy for a season, hasn't been a lot. But
I mean, they did tie for the Big 12 lead. I just think ultimately, like, the pieces and talent still matters. I still am in on Bobby Petrino as an offensive football coach. But, like, Taylor Green, when Arkansas got him, I was like, oh, okay. Like, I can kind of see where they're going with this. I like him as a piece, and it worked out, and he was fantastic for them. Billy Edwards, who's probably North Carolina's starting quarterback, I don't see it at all. And the health problems.
I'm not a Billy Edwards guy.
I'm just like, I don't know, man. I don't know about all that. Like, I don't see it. And then the skill position talent around them, they got a couple backs I think are okay, but I don't really like the receivers. The offensive line is gonna be a work in progress. Like, I don't know.
My last question about spring football. Will there really be no spring portal? There isn't one technically, like there is not one on the calendar. And they just passed the NCAA those really strict rules where if a guy unenrolls at a school, transfers to another school to go play football for them, that coach will be suspended for 6 games and the team will be fined like 20% of the budget or something like that. Those are incredibly strict penalties. Will it hold up? I don't know. Will some guys try to sue their way out to another school, basically do what Xavier Lucas did last year? We're going to get to the end of spring here, and a lot of guys are going to find out they're lower on the portal than they wanted to be. And you're going to have coaches being like, man, we really don't have a number 2 corner and we need a number 2 corner. What can we do? And all these coaches want rules, but they don't want to be the ones to have to follow them. So we'll see. We'll find out in a couple of weeks here if that holds up. If it does, I think it's probably good for the sport. But another kind of wait and see thing. But we're coming down to that period now where if guys are going to move, they would start to move.
I think we had this conversation on the show, Chris, because I think we asked this coming in, and before this new rule dropped, I thought it would be around 20 to 25 guys that tested the portal after the spring. But with this new legislation and on the penalties, like, there's not going to be, certainly I think you've killed tampering. Like, nobody's going to go out of their way to go and get a guy, but there's not going to be a guy that like loses a job in the spring and then a coach is going to be willing to risk this. So you're going to have to get something cleared by the court before you even start finding a school. So I do think you said it'll be closer to 5. I think 5, the over-under would be like 3.5 for me if guys that try it. Because it's going to be mostly guys that lose jobs and see that like, oh, like my earning potential is really minimal. I need an injury to help myself, like, make what I think I could make in the fall. The tampering in the spring, I think will be. I think. That's
the thing is, like a lot of these cases for guys that are suing for eligibility are being like, by not letting me do this, you are costing me X amount of dollars that the school has offered me if I come back. In order for that to happen here, you will have to have a player be like, I have been promised a starting job at X, which would be the tampering thing. So I don't know. It's very complicated, but we'll see. We'll see if a couple of guys try to do it or not, or if we're finally back to.
Number. I'm sticking on the 3.5 number of guys who try it post spring.
Yeah. All right. What's your last one here?
It's been a wild year at Michigan, Chris. A lot's happened, and I think they've come out on the other side, like, looking pretty good. Like, how does Michigan reboot here? I think, bringing Jason Beck over, incredible fit for Bryce Underwood and his skills. He's basically Devin Dampier, but a much better passer and a lot bigger. Like, I think if they do, offensive line's probably not going to be as good as what they had at Utah. But I think you can build that. You can make it really good. And Michigan, like, regardless of before the scandal with Sharon Moore, all that stuff, like, they had pretty clearly fallen off. I think when we did this show after they played Oklahoma this year, Chris, and I said that Michigan is playing football like they still have the personnel from the 23 team, and they have nothing close to it. It was a lot of denial of the realities that it seemed like everybody else could see. Like, you can't just mash people. Your offensive line's not that good. I don't know what to tell you, and that's tough when your head coach is an offensive line coach by trade. So with Kyle Whittingham, it's really a fascinating, like, fantasy football piece of this where, he's been doing more with less at Utah for 2 decades. And now you're at a place where, if you're listing the places in college football that are better resourced than Michigan, it's a pretty short list in whatever way you want to define resources. That's a short list. And so I'm intrigued to see how this goes, but I think that you've got a better guy behind the wheel there that I think can really unlock some things at Michigan. And maybe they can get over the hump and finally win a championship after 2 long years of sitting and waiting, Chris.
Yeah, their spring game is this coming Saturday, and it sounds like a lot of the ones aren't going to play, so you probably won't see guys like Jordan Marshall, the running back, or Bryce Underwood. So it's they're still working on the format, it seems, but they are going to draft a team, and we'll see. So that'll be an interesting spring game, I think, to watch this coming week as our first, for a lot of us, our kind of first real look at a lot of these players. So that's some stuff there. We'll talk more spring over the next couple of weeks too, as more spring games happen. We start to watch some stuff as we gather what we've got from the places that we have visited. But figured it was time to talk about some actual football a little bit. And I think we did that. One other note, a news thing following up from a thing we mentioned a couple of weeks ago. Chandler Morris, former Virginia quarterback, his lawsuit for a 7th year of eligibility was denied by for a temporary restraining order. So he's probably going in the draft now, or at least undrafted free agent. We'll know next week is when the draft is. So we'll find out about that. And with that, we're going to end the show the way we always do, and that is by remembering some guys.
It's better than this. Guys being dudes.
First thing I'll note, need some more nominations. Got a couple in the bank here, but we're getting low again for listener nominations. Send those in. My nomination this week, considering I was just at SMU over the weekend, Shane Buechele, quarterback.
Oh, baby.
Quarterback about 6-7 years ago, formerly at Texas, came over to SMU, was quarterback for Sonny Dykes, and they really got that going again in the late 2010s there. Went on to play a little bit in the NFL and the XFL, I think, but really solid guy, solid quarterback, was really the guy who kind of pushed SMU back into being a good program again, which eventually got them into the ACC, and off you go. But I always thought he was really a good player.
You know, Chris, we talk about that Texas Notre Dame game with an alarming amount of regularity in our personal lives and on the show.
That was
2016.
2016 Tyrone Swoops 18-wheeler.
See, I covered that game. I don't remember if you were there, and I don't think you were. But
No.
I covered that game, and Tyrone Swoops gets all the glory. But, Chris, you know who the starting quarterback was in that game?
It was Shane Buechele.
Shane Buechele. I believe that was the first game of the Sterling Gilbert era when Texas decided to embrace the Baylor offense. And Texas had come off of a pretty horrific run of offensive football. And then all of a sudden they were throwing it all over the yard. And, I think that Notre Dame team was ranked in the top 10 when they played them. Playing fast, explosive plays. We just hadn't seen that out of Texas in a long time. And I remember the excitement in that place was palpable. And, it didn't end the way that maybe they would have liked, but that was a very memorable football game. And Shane Buechele was a big part of that before he went to SMU. So.
Guess what? I didn't realize he was still he's still in the NFL. He actually made his NFL debut this year, January 4th, because the Chiefs had all those quarterback injuries.
Oh,
he had been on the practice squad for them in the past. They signed him. He backs up Chris Oladukin. I think is how you say that one.
But I remember he showed up on the scene, and I had literally never heard of him before. I'm like,
I remembered him from USF back in the day. But Buechele went 7 for 14 for 88 yards against the Raiders. He was released the next day, but then he re-signed with the Buffalo Bills practice squad. So still around and out there doing it. Good for him.
All right. Well, we didn't mean to double up on Longhorns here, Chris, but if there's one bias that we have in the Remember Some Guys, it's that we kind of lean more on the quirky programs more than the blue blood. So we're going to get some blue blood in here. I'm going to go with Ramonce Taylor of Texas. He was the leading rusher on a Texas team that couldn't really run the ball very well, a national champion team in 2005. Vince Young was kind of their running. And I remember him. He was a very good player on NCAA 05, I believe. But I thought his name was Romance for a long time. I was like, oh, there's old Romance Taylor, but it's Ramonce, a very fun player, a small player. Just enjoyed watching him play football at Texas. And it's interesting, Chris, the guys that are on these teams that do special things at programs, regardless of what happens after, and Ramonce Taylor had kind of a not great time after that national championship year. They are kind of remembered forever. You are immortal. We were talking these teams that go to the Final Four in basketball. The diehard fans of those teams 30 years from now are going to remember the name of the guy on the end of the bench for that team. And Ramonce Taylor was certainly not that, but a guy that certainly lives forever in Texas football lore. So shout out to Ramonce Taylor.
Good one. And the nomination from listener Keith Mottram, who says, gentlemen, I was going to see if you guys can remember back to Darren Crean, the University of Miami defensive end outside linebackers from the early 90s, but not because of his playing career necessarily, although he was first team All-Big East in 1993, but because he was essentially a trendsetter for the current NCAA transfer portal rules. When Crean signed his letter of intent with Miami on February 8th, 1989, Jimmy Johnson was the head coach. Johnson then was hired by the Dallas Cowboys on February 26th. This resulted in Crean suing to get out of his letter of intent, arguing in court that he signed the letter of intent to play for Jimmy Johnson, and because Johnson left for the Cowboys, this was a breach of contract. The lawsuit did not endear Crean to his new teammates or the Miami former players, if memory serves correctly. Like most lawsuits against the NCAA back then, Crean's lawsuit was unsuccessful. But now in the days of the new transfer portal, if a coach leaves, the players are given a 15-day window in which they can enter the portal and don't even need to file a lawsuit to do so. Crean was just before his time, I guess. Great work on the pod. Enjoy listening to you guys. Keep up the great work. I did not know that about him.
Yeah.
That is a great poll. He did play in the NFL for a minute and became a longtime strength coach in the NFL. I think he was strength coach of the year in 2014 for the Dolphins. He was doing some XFL strength coach. Now he's working somewhere else, but that's a good poll,
Chris,
there.
that was a story from a long time ago, but it's crazy. Like, it was 15 years, maybe less, that coaches were still restricting. So not only did you have to sit out a year when you transferred,
Not even 15,
yeah, maybe 10 years. Not only did you have to sit out a year when you transferred, but coaches would have axe lists. I don't know what we called them at the time, but you can't go to anyone in our conference. You can't go to anyone on our future non-conference schedule, which could be totally random. So you had a lot of control, not only over, obviously eligibility and all those things, but where kids go. And even then, that was a very controversial thing. And even then I was like, that is not right at all. And we live in a different era. So
what would often happen was the player would go public, and then there'd be a lot of backlash to the coach, who would eventually relent and let them go. And that's when they changed it with the one-time transfer rule. I actually was looking up for another story I'm working on. I was looking up, there's a running back at Notre Dame back in the 80s, 90s, who went undrafted, I think, and sued to come back to college football, and was unsuccessful as well. So there was a time when the NCAA rules were easier to enforce. That is not the case anymore. Please send your nominations for Remember Some Guys to bunchformationpod@gmail.com, and that will do it here. I will be back later this week with an interview. If that doesn't work out, then both of us will be back with an interview that we have already in the bank. So enjoy the week. Enjoy more spring games next Saturday and Friday. There's some on Friday as well. And we will talk to you guys soon. So for David Ubben, I'm Chris Vannini. Thank you for listening and watching Bunch Formation. And we will talk to you later this week.
And please, remember, bring back the turnover chain.